Sir Tim Clark did not mince words, speaking on the restrictions on the India-UAE seat capacity. He said that the restrictions currently are suppressing demand, and which is what is keeping airfares much higher. And he's urging the Indian government to deploy more seats on the India-UAE routes. Speaking on the capacity crunch, he says Emirates could be twice the size of what it is currently if not for the current aircraft delivery delays. And he also added that it is not cost but capacity shortage that is hurting airlines.
Surprisingly, and I speak not only for Emirates but the airline group as a whole, apart from the North American and Canadian situation, demand is very strong. Given the difficulties, socioeconomic, geopolitical, etc. But demand for travel is as strong as it was this time last year and the year before. So I'm kind of fairly optimistic if we can get through all of this, and that there aren't major disruptions to the global economy, that things will continue as they are, I should say. The fuel is down, yields are up, so it's for the first time in our we have the opportunity to actually make a decent return on our investment. Doesn't happen often in our business, but nevertheless, things are looking good at the moment. But hey ho, anything can happen.
How are you seeing traffic coming from India? Have any patterns changed?
No, not at all. I think we have to suffer. Our biggest single problem is dealing with the demand for the seats that we have, because they've been restricted for 10 years. And yet the demand for India, certainly to places like Dubai, has grown exponentially. So that's a high-class problem, actually. And of course, it means that the fares are going to be that much higher because supply is restricted. The Indian market in the last 20 or 30 years has really transformed itself into a very robust, both inwards and outwards. And the Indian economy, certainly under this government, has moved ahead quite at pace, where it's trying to engage in the global economy in a much more measured way, but more expansive way than it ever did before. But to do that, part of the equation of getting that right is you've got to have access in and out of your country. So the wealth multiplier that is created by air access is known to most countries. It doesn't make any sense to me to kind of restrict that, and the Indian population suffers as a result of that. So if you want to open your country, if you want it to be a main player in the global economy, certain things have got to be done to make that work. After all, the Indian economy has expanded in all sorts of areas successfully. So air transport needs to be part of that.
Since we are talking about India, Indian carriers are expanding internationally. And since we already have a restriction on seats, do you see the share that you have on the Indian traffic getting impacted there?
It's always a question of the restrictions on what will happen to Emirates. What the Indian carriers need to concentrate really on is doing the thing that they could do very easily, which is open up their global markets. If this has an effect on Emirates, so be it. But after all, Emirates has been restricted for 10 years. We've grown our business globally. We are much larger than we were when those restrictions were put in place. In fact, last year we had the highest profits we've ever made. That's without India contributing as much as it used to. So clearly the global markets are there for all, and there's no reason why the Indian carriers, whether it be Indigo or Air India, shouldn't be able to make a go of it without having to worry about whether they go over Dubai or not. The fact is that Dubai is a very, very significant market in itself. And if you talk to the Indian population and the Indian carriers themselves, with their hands on the heart, they'll say it's probably the most potent external market city that they have on the network. And all we've done is suppress it. So if today we had where we need to be, instead of having between Dubai and India 65,000 seats in each direction per week, today that could be more than 2.5 times the size of that. Think what the Indian carriers would get out of that. Huge amounts. And that would fuel the income they need to make the investments they need for large aircraft and to go further. And have they got the capability of doing it? Yes, they have. So
from 65,000, where should it be
to me,
for the time being?
You know, on the rate we were growing, it would be 200,000 now. That's where it would be.
That's the potential.
Oh yeah, easily.
Yes.
And you'd fill that as well. And the Indian carriers would get 100,000 of those instead of 33. And they would do very well out of it. More points into India for everybody. So you know, with more capacity, better products, etc. Honestly, it's a no-brainer.
There's always been resistance from the Indian side. You've mentioned this in the past conversations as well. Any more talks with the Indian government that you're having?
I'm not aware of that at the moment. I just hope it's not just about Dubai and Emirates, etc. It's about the other carriers, whether it be the European carriers, the Asian carriers. They all want a piece more in India. Equally, the Indian carriers want access to their markets, but you won't get that if you restrict access to your own. So maybe the powers that be here in this country will kind of realize that at some point we've got to give ground on this. And after all, why are they doing it? Why would they? Is this to protect Air India? Is it to protect? But protection is the worst form of subsidy, if you can call it that. It doesn't do the carriers any favors because they become very complacent in the way they go about their business. There's absolutely no reason why Air India, Indigo, whoever, shouldn't be 4 times the size it is today. And as you can see, these great plans that Air India has put in place, hundreds of airplanes come into play, they realize the potential.
So we spoke about orders placed by Indigo and Air India, but while the demand has bounced back, there is shortage of supply. How bad is it?
It's chronic. It really is chronic. I mean, it's all very well for us to make these huge orders, hundreds and hundreds, but at the back of your mind, you know that they can't even get certain aircraft out of the door by the end of next year, they being the manufacturers. So these are very aspirational orders, and we all face it. We're hugely competitive, but we talk about the difficulties of getting the assets we need, both in terms of the new assets and then be able to support them in the supply chain. And it's the biggest single common factor of concern that the airline industry has is this.
So definitely it is constraining capacity expansion, but how are you then managing and mitigating these issues?
Well, because a lot of the aeroplanes that we were going to retire, we retained. Secondly, we refurbished them completely. So as you would do a hotel, we gutted them and are rebuilding the interiors. That's going on as we speak. We've got 220 aircraft going through that, from the 380s to the 777s. Into those aeroplanes are coming new products. Premium economy, the new business class cabin, the upgraded first class cabin, new bar on the 380, etc. So we were able to stabilize the line. So whereas they were coming out, the new aircraft were coming in, they didn't come in, so we just kept going. So the fleet has been in and around 260 for a year or so now. Now we have a line of 350s coming in, 65 of those. We've got 6 already. They're not exactly on time, but they're helping. So we can manage. But as I've often said, Emirates could be twice the size it is today had we had everything that we needed in place. The demand is that strong.
Yeah. OEMs definitely blame the supply chain issues. But when you talked about refurbishment, how is it being funded? Is it Emirates, or are you taking compensation? There were reports that you're taking compensation.
No. Look, in the end, the most important thing is you've got to refurbish them. We have $5.5 billion allocated to that of our own cash. And to be quite honest, if you penalise the supply chain through punitive damages, you'll just push them out of business completely. There has to be a grown-up conversation when it's all over as to the effect it's had on the business. But in the end, you've got to get on with the job. There's no point sort of sitting back saying, how can I get $10 from him so I can pay $10 to her for whatever it may be. It doesn't work like that. You've got to take control, recognise the shortfall of all these things and get it going, which is what we've done.
So what is the outlook for 2025 in terms of delivery of planes? How much are you expecting?
Well, we were meant to have about 17 350s coming in the course of this year. We've got 6 so far. If we get the 17, I'll be surprised. But hopefully, you never know, things may work out. And then a stream of 777s the back end of next year or the beginning of the following year. Can we manage? Of course we can manage. The network is robust, it's strong, it's profitable.